Everybody, my name is Tim Bevan and I own a painting called Little Rose, and it's attributed to James McNeill Whistler. The problem with a Whistler painting that's not in the catalog is that we have to now get the experts to agree that this is real. I've spent over a year now doing homework on the painting and research, and pretty soon I'll be filing a report in with the true experts of all things Whistler to get their final verdict on the painting. Luckily for me, this was owned in private New York City collections for almost 100 years. It wasn't really put out there except for a couple of expositions and published a couple of times. Even Whistler's great nephew asked for the photographic rights to this painting. This is the Little Rose. Now, the Little Rose is not a masterpiece. It is an oil study. Oil studies were common for Whistler before he made his grand masterpieces. So I'll tilt it up to you a little bit. One of the problems with this painting is that this mark is different. This butterfly mark is a little differently done than many of his other styles, and there weren't many styles. He mostly did butterflies and rectangles that were reversed out in this style. This one's a little more hasty. I'm going to show you over here at the computer. This is one, I would call it a masterpiece. This is, let me pull up my notes here, Agnes Mary Alexander. And it's a fine painting, but it has no butterfly mark. But if you look at this here, I'm sorry for this poor quality imagery. That, my friends, is a hastily applied rectangle positive butterfly, just like what the Little Rose has to her. Now, our story all starts with a man named Merton Clavet. Merton Clavet was a traveling magician, and he traveled across the United States, and then from the 1890s to 1906 he was in Paris and London, where he met Whistler in 1891. He also claimed to have worked, and he was a student of Rodin's, actually, the sculptor. Now, Clavet owned probably about 8 to 10 pieces of items that were from James McNeill Whistler, and none of them were truly unique to each other. They were all different. A couple of pencil drawings, a couple of watercolors, a couple of oil studies, but nothing of any grand quality of Whistler, not any masterpieces. Now, when we look at the Little Rose here, he sold this to a man named George S. Hellman in 1926, along with a few other pieces over time. Merton had this painting hanging in the walls of his home. I honestly believe that he was not looking to sell it. George Hellman spotted it when he was purchasing some of Merton Clavet's own paintings, to which his style is much different than James McNeill Whistler. There is positively no way he could have forged this. This man right here is Leon Dabo. Leon Dabo was trained by Whistler, and George Hellman in 1931 wanted to get some approval that his Whistlers were real. Leon Dabo saw the Little Rose, along with a few other of Hellman's collection. I think he probably at that point had about 24 pieces. And Leon Dabo went around the room and looked at each one, inspected it, and gave his opinions on it. Hellman's secretary took notes. This is what he said about our Little Rose here. He said, "This is lovely, lovely, lovely. Oh, this is lovely. An exquisite, complete arrangement of color and tonal values which characterize the genius of Whistler. The profile of this study absolutely identifies it as the child of Whistler painted, and which is known as the Little Rose of Lyme Regis," who we will be talking about that painting in a minute. This study has a characteristic note always met within Whistler's work, in that it is indubitably and essentially American. This is as American as any of the work of Fuller, John Lafarge, or Arthur B. Davies. There is something indefinable about this little girl which characterizes the type of femininity which is definitely, essentially, and racially American. The essentially American expression is found in its highest emotionalism. In his painting of his mother, no French, no English artist could possibly have painted this study and given that distinct American expression as well as Whistler. On the right-hand side, this is where he talks about the butterfly. The butterfly is hastily applied in a very large size. It owes its position to the fact that Whistler needed a counterbalancing act, darker value, to bring out the glow of the face and the hair. Leon Dabo knew that these notes, which eventually were published so the world could critique them, but Merton Clavette wrote a receipt to George S. Hellman when he purchased this painting. And on that receipt, it was actually for 3 different pieces of art. One was, I believe, a pencil drawing, and 2 oil studies. This one here, and also this one here. Sorry for the poor imagery, but this is called, excuse me, let me get my papers, Study of Henry Irving as Philip II. Now this one was gifted by George Hellman to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and this was a very ratty, torn study. It was rolled up, and this is what Leon Dabo had to say on why this painting was real. And again, Leon Dabo, trained by Whistler, art expert. A study of an old, much abused scrap of canvas, apparently a hasty attempt to correlate either the features of the character of Henry Irving for his subsequent full-length portrait. There are a number of indications here which are so unmistakably Whistlerian, as for instance, the particular tone of the lip of which a blur is seen on the right hand. Whistler's love of suggestive, semi-obscurity tone values can be distinctly seen in the brush marks which, however vague to the layman, show that he had the concept of a ruffle. That painting did eventually get a ruffle for his full-length portrait. There are exquisite passages of tone and color in the upper right corner of the background. It may safely be assumed that this is one of the many studies which a nervous, never-to-be-satisfied, creative artist like Whistler would make when preoccupied with the problem of a portrait. Now, if you go onto our Facebook page, facebook.com/Whistler Painting, you will see this evidence as well as many more pieces of evidence. And in the next video that we're going to do and be putting on YouTube, we're going to be examining this painting in the back. If you look at it here, at one point, this painting, when it left New York City for about 14 years, was in the hands of someone who also wanted to know a little bit more about it, and I believe they took it out of this frame and took the nails out, put this modern stuff back in, and I believe it was to fly with the painting or to bring it on a bus to show someone. I do know they showed a few people in galleries in New York City who also agreed, and they would stake their name, reputation, that this was a Whistler. In the next video, for the first time, we're going to take this painting out, and I want to know whether this painting, like our friend from Sir Irving Henry, is that what his name is? I keep forgetting. If it was something that was cut or easily rolled up so he could travel, and that will prove a very important piece in this tale. So thank you very much for watching, and please like our Facebook page.